2 years, 3 months, and 16 days. That's how long it had been since Isabella Blackwood's husband last looked at her like she was more than expensive furniture in his perfectly appointed life. She sat alone at their mahogany dining table, watching the candles burn down to waxy stubs, her anniversary dinner growing cold on bone china that cost more than most people's monthly salary. Her phone buzzed against the table. A text from Marcus, emergency board meeting. Don't wait up. Not, sorry, darling. Not, I love you. Just the clinical efficiency of a man who had forgotten that his wife was a human being with feelings, not another item on his endless to-do list. Isabella stared at her reflection in the darkened window, barely recognizing the woman looking back at her. At 29, she should have been in the prime of her life, radiant with love and purpose. Instead, she looked hollow, like a beautiful shell that had been emptied of everything that once made it precious. Happy anniversary to me, she whispered to the empty room, her voice echoing off the marble floors and cathedral ceilings of the Blackwood mansion, a house that had never felt like a home. 3 years ago, Isabella Romano had been the rising star curator at the prestigious Whitmore Gallery, passionate about art, surrounded by creativity and culture. She'd had her own apartment in Soho, a circle of artist friends, and dreams of opening her own gallery someday. She'd been alive, vibrant, full of opinions and laughter and fire. Then she'd met Marcus Blackwood at a charity auction, and everything changed. He'd been magnetic then, tall, commanding, with steel grey eyes that seemed to see straight through to her soul. He'd bid $20,000 on a piece she'd selected for the auction, then approached her afterward. "You have exquisite taste," he'd said, his voice deep and cultured. "The way you described that painting during the presentation, you made me see things I'd never noticed before." That had been the beginning of a whirlwind 6-month courtship. Marcus had pursued her with the same focused intensity he brought to his business dealings. Expensive dinners, weekend trips to Paris, flowers delivered to the gallery daily. He'd made her feel like the most important thing in his universe. "Marry me," he'd said on bended knee in the conservatory of the Metropolitan Museum of Art, surrounded by the very paintings that had brought them together. "Let me spend my life making you happy." She'd said yes, of course. Who wouldn't? Marcus Blackwood was brilliant, successful, devastatingly handsome, and completely devoted to her. Or so she'd thought. The changes had been gradual at first. A missed dinner here, a cancelled weekend there. "Just until the Morrison acquisition closes," he'd promised. "Just until we finalize the Patterson merger." There was always another deal, another crisis, another reason why work had to come first. Isabella had tried to be understanding. She'd given up her job at the gallery. Marcus had convinced her she didn't need to work anymore, that her job was to be his wife, to create a beautiful home for them to share. She'd thrown herself into decorating the mansion, planning elaborate dinner parties, trying to be the perfect corporate wife. But somewhere along the way, Marcus had stopped seeing her altogether. Their conversations had dwindled to logistics. "The Hendersons are coming for dinner Friday. Your dry cleaning is on the dresser. I'll be in Singapore next week." Even their physical relationship had become perfunctory, scheduled around Marcus's meetings like another item on his calendar. Isabella had tried everything to recapture his attention. She'd prepared his favorite meals, dressed in lingerie that cost more than her old monthly rent, suggested romantic getaways, even hinted about starting a family. But Marcus was always distracted, always somewhere else, even when he was sitting right next to her. The worst part wasn't the loneliness, it was the way she'd started to disappear, even from herself. The vibrant, passionate woman who had once held court at gallery openings had faded away, replaced by a shadow who drifted through her days like a ghost in her own life. That night, after clearing away the untouched anniversary dinner, Isabella stood in her walk-in closet, staring at the rows of designer dresses Marcus's assistant ordered for her to wear to corporate functions. She couldn't remember the last time she'd bought something because she loved it, the last time she'd expressed an opinion that Marcus had actually had. She was so lost in her melancholy that she almost missed the sound of the front door opening. Marcus was home, finally, at nearly midnight. Isabella. His voice echoed through the mansion's vast foyer. She found him in his study, still in his tailored suit, already opening his laptop. He glanced up when she appeared in the doorway, and for a moment, she thought she saw something like guilt flicker across his features. "Sorry about dinner," he said, but his eyes were already back on his screen. The Henderson merger hit a snag. Had to bring in the lawyers. "It's fine," Isabella lied, because what else could she say? That she'd spent their anniversary alone, wondering when she'd become so forgettable. That she couldn't remember the last time he touched her without checking his phone afterward. "Good. I knew you'd understand." Marcus was already typing, his attention completely absorbed by whatever crisis demanded his immediate attention. "Oh, by the way, Daniel's back in town. He'll probably want to do Sunday dinner at Mother's this week." Daniel. Marcus's younger brother, the family's charming black sheep. Isabella had met him briefly at their wedding, but he'd left for Europe shortly after, chasing some photography assignment that would take him around the world for a year. She'd almost forgotten he existed. "That's nice," she said softly, but Marcus was already lost in his work again, the conversation dismissed as efficiently as everything else in his life. Isabella climbed the stairs to their bedroom, well, technically her bedroom now, since Marcus had moved to the guest room months ago, claiming his late-night calls would disturb her sleep. She lay in their king-size bed, staring at the empty space beside her, and wondered how long a person could live like this before they simply faded away entirely. Sunday dinner at the Blackwood family estate was a weekly tradition that Isabella had come to dread. Marcus's mother, Eleanor, was a formidable woman who spoke in subtle criticisms wrapped in silk gloves. His father, Robert, was a quieter version of Marcus, successful, distant, and completely absorbed in business even in retirement. Isabella dutifully played her role, making polite conversation about charity galas and society events, pretending to be the happy wife while Marcus fielded calls from the office between courses. She'd become very good at pretending. She was picking at her salad, listening to Eleanor critique the new pastor at their church, when the dining room doors burst open with the energy that seemed to electrify the air. "Sorry I'm late." The voice was warm, vibrant, completely different from the measured tones of the other Blackwood men. Traffic from the airport was murder. Isabella looked up to see a man who was unmistakably a Blackwood but unlike any of them she'd met. Daniel Blackwood had the family's strong jaw and tall frame, but where Marcus was all sharp angles and controlled power, Daniel was relaxed, warm, with laugh lines around his green eyes and hair that looked like he'd been running his fingers through it. He carried a battered leather messenger bag and wore jeans with a cashmere sweater that had seen better days. "Daniel." Eleanor rose to embrace her younger son, and for the first time Isabella could remember, the older woman's face showed genuine warmth. "Look at you, so tan. Was Italy good to you?" "Italy was incredible, Mom. But I missed your Sunday roast." Daniel hugged his mother, then his father, then turned to Marcus with a grin that was both affectionate and slightly mocking. "Big brother. Still married to that laptop, I see." Marcus barely looked up from his phone. "Daniel. Good to have you back. How was the assignment?" "Enlightening. I'll show you the photos later." Daniel's eyes moved to Isabella, and she felt something strange, the sensation of being truly seen for the first time in months. "And you must be the famous Isabella." "My God, Marcus didn't do you justice." Isabella felt heat rise in her cheeks as Daniel moved around the table to greet her properly. Unlike the perfunctory social kisses she was used to, Daniel's embrace was warm, genuine, like greeting an old friend. "You look." Daniel paused, studying her face with an intensity that made her suddenly self-conscious. "Tired." "Marcus, your wife is beautiful, but she looks exhausted. Are you working her too hard at these charity things? Isabella expected Marcus to look up, to notice what his brother had seen immediately. Instead, Marcus waved dismissively without lifting his eyes from his screen. Isabella handles everything perfectly. She's very capable. He spoke about her like she was his personal assistant, not his wife. Quarterly projections are looking good, actually. The European markets are probably fascinating, Daniel interrupted smoothly, but not nearly as interesting as getting to know my sister-in-law. Isabella, tell me everything. What do you do when you're not keeping my brother's social calendar organized? The question was so unexpected, so direct, that Isabella found herself stumbling over her words. When was the last time someone had asked her about herself? I used to work in art. I was a curator, actually, at the Whitmore Gallery. The Whitmore? That's one of the most prestigious galleries in the city. What kind of work did you curate? Isabella felt something stir inside her, a spark of the passion she thought was dead. Contemporary artist, mostly. Imagine talent. I specialized in finding artists who were pushing boundaries, challenging conventional perspectives. That sounds incredible. What happened? Did you switch galleries? The innocent question hit like a blow. Isabella glanced at Marcus, who was still completely absorbed in his phone, then back at Daniel's genuinely interested face. I stopped working when Marcus and I got married. He felt it wasn't necessary anymore. Something shifted in Daniel's expression, a flicker of something that might have been disapproval, but his voice remained warm. That must have been a difficult decision. Giving up something you were passionate about. It was supposed to be temporary, Isabella said quietly, not sure why she was being so honest with this virtual stranger. Just until we got settled. But then there was always another reason to wait, another crisis at the office. Daniel nodded slowly, his green eyes thoughtful. When's the last time you visited a gallery? Just for pleasure. Isabella tried to remember and realized she couldn't. It's been a while. Well, that's a crime. A curator who doesn't visit galleries is like a musician who doesn't listen to music. Daniel's smile was warm, conspiratorial. I'm having a small exhibition opening next week. Nothing fancy, just some of my travel photography. You should come. Isabella felt her heart skip. When was the last time someone had invited her to something because they wanted her there, not because she was Marcus Blackwood's wife? I'd love to, but... But what? She glanced at Marcus again, but he was completely oblivious to their conversation, his attention split between his phone and a heated discussion with his father about market fluctuations. Marcus isn't really interested in art. He thinks it's frivolous. Daniel's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. I'm not inviting Marcus. I'm inviting you, Isabella. When's the last time you did something just because it made you happy? The question hung in the air between them, loaded with implications that Isabella wasn't ready to examine. She looked at her husband, so absorbed in his work that he hadn't noticed his wife was having the first meaningful conversation she'd had in months. You know what? Isabella heard herself saying, as if from a great distance. Yes. I'd love to see your work. Daniel's smile lit up his entire face, and Isabella felt an answering warmth spread through her chest, a feeling she'd almost forgotten existed. Wonderful. It's Thursday night at the Morrison Gallery on 5th. 7 o'clock. Daniel reached into his messenger bag and pulled out a card, pressing it into Isabella's hand. Their fingers brushed for just a moment, and Isabella felt a spark of something electric, something dangerous. Thursday, she repeated, clutching the card like a lifeline. The rest of dinner passed in a blur. Isabella found herself watching Daniel as he regaled the family with stories from his travels, his hands moving expressively as he described the lights in Tuscany, the faces he'd photographed in small French villages, the way art and life intersected in ways most people never noticed. Marcus, predictably, barely participated in the conversation, fielding calls and responding to emails between courses. But for the first time in months, Isabella didn't feel alone at the family table. Daniel included her in every story, asked for her opinions, laughed at her hesitant attempts at wit like she was the most fascinating person in the room. When they were leaving, Daniel walked them to their car, his hands shoved in his pockets against the cool evening air. "Marcus," he said, his voice carrying a subtle edge, "you're a lucky man. Don't forget that." Marcus, already on another call, just nodded absently and climbed into the driver's seat. Daniel turned to Isabella, his expression serious. "I meant what I said about Thursday. I think you need to remember who you are outside of all this." He gestured vaguely toward the mansion, the luxury car, the trappings of wealth that surrounded her like a beautiful prison. "I'm not sure I remember," Isabella admitted softly. "Then let's find out together." The drive home was silent except for Marcus's phone call with his Tokyo office. Isabella stared out the window at the city lights, Daniel's card still clutched in her hand, and wondered when she'd started feeling like a stranger in her own life. That night, lying alone in her oversized bed, Isabella studied Daniel's business card by the light of her phone. "Daniel Blackwood, photographer," it read, followed by a phone number and email address. But it was the image on the card that caught her breath, a black and white photograph of an elderly woman's hands, weathered and beautiful, holding a single flower. There was something in that image, some quality of light and shadow and human truth, that made her chest ache with longing. She tucked the card into her jewelry box, next to her grandmother's pearl earrings and the diamond bracelet Marcus had given her for their last anniversary, the one he'd had his assistant pick out while he was in a board meeting. Thursday couldn't come fast enough. The Morrison Gallery was everything the Blackwood mansion wasn't: intimate, warm, buzzing with creative energy. Isabella stood outside for a full 10 minutes, smoothing her dress nervously, wondering if she was making a terrible mistake. She told Marcus she was having dinner with her friend Claire, a lie that had come surprisingly easily, considering she'd never lied to her husband before. The moment she stepped inside, Isabella felt something she'd almost forgotten, the thrill of being surrounded by art, by people who saw beauty and meaning in the world around them. Daniel's photographs covered the walls, and they were breathtaking. Each image told a story, captured a moment of human truth that most people would have walked past without noticing. "You came." Daniel's voice was warm with genuine pleasure as he appeared beside her, looking devastatingly handsome in dark jeans and a white button-down shirt that made his green eyes pop. "I almost didn't," Isabella admitted. "I haven't been to a gallery opening in, God, it must be 3 years." "Well, then we have some catching up to do." Daniel took her arm, his touch sending another one of those electric sparks through her system. "Come on. Let me show you around." As they moved through the gallery, Isabella felt herself coming alive in a way she'd forgotten was possible. Her curatorial instincts kicked in automatically, analyzing composition, discussing the interplay of light and shadow, the emotional impact of each piece. Daniel listened to her observations with the intensity of someone who genuinely valued her expertise. This one, Isabella stopped in front of a photograph of 2 children playing in the ruins of an old church, sunlight streaming through broken windows. "The way you've captured the contrast between decay and joy, between what was lost and what continues, it's extraordinary." Daniel studied her face as she spoke, and Isabella realized with a start that he was looking at her the way Marcus used to look at her, in those early days when her opinions mattered to him. "You have an incredible eye," Daniel said softly. "The way you see things, it's exactly what I was hoping to capture but wasn't sure if I'd succeeded." Other guests began to approach them, drawn by Isabella's expertise and Daniel's obvious pride in having her there. She found herself in animated discussions about technique and meaning, her knowledge flowing naturally after months of dormancy. People listened to her opinions, asked follow-up questions, treated her like someone worth talking to. "You're Isabella Romano, aren't you?" A distinguished older man approached with his wife in tow. "I'm James Whitmore. You used to work for my gallery." Isabella's heart skipped. "Mr. Whitmore?" "Yes, it's been a while." "Too long." "Your eye for emerging talent was extraordinary. That Castellanos exhibition you curated was one of our most successful shows ever." He turned to Daniel. "You're lucky to have her input on your work. Isabella has a gift for seeing what others miss." As Mr. Whitmore walked away, Isabella felt tears prick her eyes. She'd forgotten what it felt like to be valued for her mind, her expertise, her unique perspective on the world. "Hey," Daniel said softly, noticing her emotion. "You okay?" I'd forgotten. That I used to be good at something. That I used to matter in a world that wasn't just about profit margins and board meetings." Daniel's expression grew serious. "Isabella, you still matter. You still have that gift. You've just been hiding it." They walked through the rest of the exhibition, Isabella's confidence growing with each piece they discussed. She found herself laughing at Daniel's stories about the circumstances behind each photograph, sharing her own memories of gallery openings and artist discoveries. "This is my favorite," Daniel said, stopping in front of a photograph Isabella hadn't noticed before. It showed an elderly couple in Paris, sitting on a bench in the early morning light, their hands intertwined, their faces peaceful and content. 50 years married, Daniel explained, and they still hold hands like teenagers. "I followed them for 3 blocks before I got the courage to ask if I could take their picture. They said yes, but only if I promised to send them a copy for their grandchildren." Isabella stared at the image, her chest tight with emotion. "That's what love looks like when it's real." "What do you mean?" The words came out before she could stop them. "I used to believe in love like that. Connection that lasts, that deepens over time instead of fading away." "What changed?" Isabella looked at Daniel, this man who was almost a stranger but somehow felt safer than anyone she'd talked to in years. "I married a man who loves his company more than his wife." The admission hung between them, too honest, too raw. Isabella immediately regretted it, but Daniel's expression remained gentle, understanding. "I'm sorry," she said quickly. "I shouldn't have said that. Marcus is a good man, he just..." "Isabella." Daniel's voice was soft but firm. "You don't have to defend him to me. Especially not when you're clearly unhappy." "I'm not unhappy," Isabella protested automatically, then stopped. The lie felt too heavy to carry. "Okay, maybe I am. But it's not Marcus's fault. He works hard to provide for us, and I should be grateful." "Grateful?" Daniel's voice sharpened with something like anger. "Isabella, you deserve to be seen. To be appreciated. To be cherished." The word hit her like a physical blow. Cherished. When was the last time anyone had made her feel cherished? They were standing close now, too close, the air between them charged with something dangerous and electric. Isabella could smell Daniel's cologne, could see the gold flecks in his green eyes, could feel the warmth radiating from his body. For a moment, just a moment, she let herself imagine what it would be like to be with someone who looked at her the way Daniel was looking at her now, like she was fascinating, beautiful, worth his complete attention. Then reality crashed back in. "I should go," Isabella said abruptly, stepping back. "Marcus will wonder where I've been." Daniel's laugh was bitter. "Will he? When's the last time Marcus wondered anything about you?" The question was too close to the truth, too painful to acknowledge. Isabella grabbed her purse, suddenly desperate to escape the feelings Daniel was stirring up in her. "Thank you for inviting me," she said formally, falling back on the polite social mask she'd perfected as Marcus's wife. "Your work is truly exceptional." But Daniel caught her arm gently as she turned to leave. "Isabella, wait. Don't go back to being invisible. You're too important for that." She looked into his eyes, saw the sincerity there, the genuine concern, and felt her carefully constructed walls beginning to crumble. "I don't know how to be anything else anymore," she whispered. "Then let me remind you." The words were soft, intimate, full of promise and danger. Isabella pulled away before she could do something stupid, something that would destroy what was left of her marriage. But as she drove home through the dark city streets, she couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted. For the first time in 2 years, she'd felt alive, valued, seen. And the man who'd made her feel that way was her husband's brother. Marcus was already asleep when she got home, or pretending to be. Isabella lay awake until dawn, staring at the ceiling, Daniel's words echoing in her mind, "Let me remind you." The problem was, she was starting to want him to. Over the following weeks, Isabella found herself thinking about Daniel constantly. He'd given her his number at the gallery, and they'd started texting, innocent conversations about art, books, life. But there was an undercurrent to their exchanges that made Isabella's heart race every time her phone buzzed. "So an amazing Rothko exhibit today," Daniel would text. "Reminded me of something you said about color and emotion. Thinking of you," became his standard sign-off, and Isabella would stare at those 3 words for minutes at a time, her chest tight with feelings she wasn't ready to name. Meanwhile, Marcus remained oblivious to his wife's emotional awakening. If anything, he seemed even more absorbed in work than usual, preparing for what he called the biggest merger in Blackwood Industries history. He worked 16-hour days, traveled constantly, and when he was home, he was either on conference calls or locked in his study with legal documents. Isabella tried, one last time, to bridge the growing chasm between them. "Marcus," she said one evening, finding him in his study as usual, surrounded by contracts and financial reports. "Can we talk?" He glanced up briefly, his expression impatient. "Can it wait? I'm in the middle of reviewing the Henderson proposal and..." "When?" Isabella interrupted, her voice sharper than she'd intended. "When can we talk, Marcus? Because it's been 2 years since we had a real conversation, and I'm starting to forget what your voice sounds like when you're not discussing profit margins." Marcus looked genuinely surprised by her outburst. "Isabella, what's gotten into you? You've been different lately. Distant." The irony of that accusation made Isabella laugh bitterly. "I've been distant? Marcus, we haven't had dinner together in 3 weeks. We haven't made love in 2 months. We haven't talked about anything more personal than your travel schedule since our anniversary. I've been busy." "You're always busy." The words exploded out of her with 2 years of suppressed frustration. The Henderson merger, the Patterson acquisition, the quarterly reports, there's always something more important than your wife. Marcus set down his pen, giving her his full attention for the first time in months. "Isabella, everything I do is for us. For our future, our security." "What future?" Isabella's voice cracked with emotion. "We never talk about children, about travel, about growing old together. We never talk about anything that isn't business. Once this merger closes, there will be another merger." Isabella was crying now, all her careful composure finally cracking. "And another acquisition, and another crisis. There's always something, Marcus. Always something more important than me." Marcus stood up, coming around his desk with something like alarm in his eyes. "Isabella, you're being dramatic. I love you. You know that." "Do I?" Isabella wiped her tears with the back of her hand. "When's the last time you said it and meant it? When's the last time you looked at me, really looked at me, and saw the woman you married?" Marcus opened his mouth to respond, then closed it, clearly at a loss. I can't remember either, Isabella said softly. Marcus, I'm drowning in this marriage. I'm disappearing a little more every day, and you don't even notice. That's not. I do notice. You look beautiful, you always look beautiful. I don't want to look beautiful, Marcus. I want to feel alive. I want to matter to someone. I want to have conversations about things that interest me, not just smile and nod while you discuss market trends. Marcus ran a hand through his hair, looking genuinely distressed. I don't understand what you want from me. I want you to want me, Isabella said simply. Not just as a wife, not just as someone to organize your social calendar and look good at business dinners. I want you to want to spend time with me, to know what I'm thinking, to care about what makes me happy. I do care. When's the last time you asked about my day and actually listened to the answer? When's the last time you remembered something I told you that wasn't related to your work? Marcus was quiet for a long moment, and Isabella could see him trying to remember, trying to find evidence to contradict what they both knew was true. I'll do better, he said finally. After the Henderson merger closes, we'll take a vacation. Just the two of us. Isabella felt her heart break a little more. You said that about the Morrison acquisition. And the Patterson merger. Marcus, I don't need a vacation. I need a husband who's present in our marriage. I am present. Are you? Isabella challenged. Because yesterday I could have dyed my hair purple and you wouldn't have noticed. Last week I mentioned that I was thinking about taking an art class, and you just grunted and kept reading your emails. Marcus looked stricken, and for a moment, Isabella thought she'd finally gotten through to him. But then his phone rang, his direct line, the one only his most important clients had, and she watched his attention immediately shift. I have to take this, he said apologetically, already reaching for the phone. It's Henderson himself. Isabella stared at him for a moment, watching him choose work over their marriage one more time, and felt something inside her finally snap. Of course you do, she said quietly, and walked out of his study. That night, lying alone in her bed, Isabella made a decision that would change everything. She picked up her phone and typed a message to Daniel, "Are you free for coffee tomorrow? I could use a friend." His response came immediately, "Always. For you, always." They met at a small cafe in Soho, far from the upscale restaurants where Isabella might run into anyone from Marcus's business circle. Daniel was waiting for her when she arrived, and the smile that spread across his face when he saw her made her feel beautiful in a way she'd almost forgotten. "You look upset," he said immediately, standing to pull out her chair. "What happened?" Isabella found herself telling him everything: the fight with Marcus, the years of emotional neglect, the way she'd slowly disappeared from her own life. Daniel listened without judgment, his green eyes full of concern and something deeper, something that made Isabella's heart race. "I feel like I'm dying inside," she admitted, stirring her coffee with shaking hands. "Like I'm fading away a little more every day." "You're not dying," Daniel said firmly. "You're just buried under all the expectations and roles other people have put on you. But you're still there, Isabella. I can see you." "Can you?" Isabella looked up at him, desperate for confirmation that she was still real, still worth something. "You're brilliant and passionate and beautiful," Daniel said, his voice intense with conviction. "You have opinions and dreams and this incredible way of seeing beauty in the world that most people miss completely. You're extraordinary, and anyone who can't see that is an idiot." Isabella felt tears spring to her eyes. "Thank you for saying that. I'm not just saying it. I mean every word." Daniel reached across the table and covered her hand with his touch warm and electric. "Isabella, you deserve to be with someone who sees how amazing you are. Someone who appreciates your mind, your heart, your incredible capacity for love." The air between them crackled with tension, with possibility, with the dangerous territory they were approaching. Isabella knew she should pull her hand away, should make some excuse and leave, should go home to her husband and try to make her marriage work. Instead, she turned her hand over so their palms were touching, and felt something she hadn't experienced in years, the thrill of being truly wanted by someone who saw her, really saw her, for who she was. "Daniel," she whispered, his name a prayer and a warning all at once. "I know," he said softly. "I know this is complicated. I know you're married to my brother. But Isabella, I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since that night at the gallery. The way you lit up when you talked about art, the way you made everyone around you see things differently, you're incredible." Isabella's heart was pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. "We can't. This is wrong. What's wrong is the way Marcus treats you. What's wrong is that you've been made to feel invisible and unimportant when you're the most fascinating woman I've ever met." Isabella pulled her hand away, but she couldn't bring herself to leave. "You don't understand. Marriage it's complicated. Marcus isn't a bad man, he's just emotionally unavailable. Selfish. So focused on his own success that he can't see the incredible woman right in front of him." Each word hit like a dart, finding its target with painful accuracy. "I took vows," Isabella said weakly. "So did he? Vows to love and cherish you. Is he keeping those promises?" Isabella couldn't answer, because they both knew the truth. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of unspoken feelings heavy between them. Finally, Daniel spoke again, his voice gentle but determined. "I'm not asking you to leave Marcus. I'm not asking you to do anything you're not ready for. But Isabella, you deserve to be happy. You deserve to be seen and appreciated and loved the way you should be loved. If Marcus can't give you that, maybe you should consider what you really want from your life." Isabella looked into Daniel's eyes and saw everything she'd been missing in her marriage: attention, appreciation, genuine affection. The way he looked at her made her feel beautiful, intelligent, valued. Everything Marcus had made her forget she was. "I should go," she said, but she didn't move. "Should and want aren't the same thing," Daniel said softly. "What do you want, Isabella?" The question hung in the air between them, loaded with possibility and danger. Isabella knew the safe answer, the right answer, the answer that would preserve her marriage and her carefully ordered life. But for the first time in 2 years, she told the truth instead. "I want to feel alive again." Daniel's smile was soft, understanding, full of promise. "Then let me help you remember what that feels like." Over the following weeks, Isabella found herself living a double life. During the day, she was Mrs. Marcus Blackwood, dutiful wife attending charity luncheons and managing the household staff. But several times a week, she would meet Daniel for coffee, or gallery visits, or long walks through Central Park where they talked about art and life and dreams. Daniel showed her the city through an artist's eyes, pointing out details she'd stopped noticing: the way light fell across building facades, the expressions on strangers' faces, the small moments of beauty that existed everywhere if you just learned how to see them again. With Daniel, Isabella rediscovered the woman she used to be. Her opinions mattered. Her insights were valued. Her laughter came easily, bubbling up from some deep place she'd thought had dried up entirely. "I'd forgotten," she told Daniel one afternoon as they stood in front of a Monet at the Met, "how good it feels to really look at something beautiful and have someone understand why it moves you." "You light up when you talk about art," Daniel said, watching her face instead of the painting. "It's like watching someone come alive." Isabella turned to look at him, and the intensity in his green eyes made her breath catch. They were standing close, closer than friends should stand, and Isabella could feel the dangerous pull between them growing stronger every day. "Daniel," she started, but he cut her off gently. "I know what you're going to say. That this is getting too complicated, that we're crossing lines we shouldn't cross. And you're right. But Isabella, I've never felt this way about anyone before." Isabella's heart hammered in her chest. You can't say things like that. Why not? Because it makes it real. Because it makes it harder to pretend that what's happening between us is just friendship. Isabella looked around the crowded museum, suddenly aware that they were having this conversation in public, surrounded by other people who might recognize her, might know Marcus. We can't do this here, she whispered. Then where? Your house. My apartment. Isabella, we can't keep pretending that what we feel for each other isn't real. That evening, Isabella found herself at Daniel's apartment, a cozy space in Greenwich Village that was everything Marcus's mansion wasn't. The walls were covered with his photographs, books spilled from shelves in comfortable chaos, and soft jazz played from hidden speakers. It felt like a home, a place where real people lived and loved and created beautiful things. This is lovely, Isabella said, looking around with genuine appreciation. It feels so alive. It's not much compared to what you're used to, Daniel said, suddenly seeming uncertain. It's perfect, Isabella said honestly. It feels like you. Daniel had asked her to help him select pieces for an upcoming exhibition, and they spread photographs across his coffee table, Isabella's curatorial instincts kicking in automatically. But as they walked, the air between them grew more and more charged. This one, Isabella said, pointing to a particularly striking image of a woman dancing alone in an empty ballroom. There's such loneliness in it, but also such beauty. Such strength. It reminds me of you, Daniel said softly. Isabella looked up at him, and suddenly they weren't talking about photography anymore. The air between them crackled with 2 months of suppressed attraction, with all the words they hadn't said, all the feelings they'd been trying to ignore. Isabella, Daniel whispered, reaching up to cup her face with his hand. I'm falling in love with you. The words hung in the air between them, beautiful and terrible and absolutely forbidden. We can't, Isabella breathed, but she didn't pull away from his touch. I know we can't. I know it's wrong, I know it's complicated, I know you're married to my brother. But I'm falling in love with you anyway. Isabella closed her eyes, leaning into his touch despite herself. I think I'm falling in love with you too, and it's tearing me apart. Daniel's thumb traced across her cheekbone, wiping away a tear she didn't realize had fallen. Don't let it tear you apart. Let it wake you up. When Isabella opened her eyes again, Daniel was looking at her with such tenderness, such genuine love, that she felt her last defenses crumble. She reached up and covered his hand with hers, turning her face to press a kiss to his palm. Daniel, she whispered, his name is surrender. He leaned down and kissed her then, soft and gentle and full of all the love and appreciation and desire that had been building between them for months. Isabella kissed him back, pouring all her loneliness and longing into the connection, feeling more alive than she had in years. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard, both shaken by the intensity of what had just happened. Oh God, Isabella gasped, pressing her hands to her face. What have I done? Hey, look at me. Daniel gently pulled her hands away from her face. Don't make this something ugly. What we have is real, Isabella. What we feel for each other is real. What we have is wrong, Isabella said, but even as the words left her mouth, they felt hollow. How could something that felt so right, so natural, so much like coming home, be wrong? Is it? Is it wrong to want to be with someone who sees you, who appreciates you, who loves you for exactly who you are? Isabella looked into Daniel's eyes and saw everything she'd been missing in her marriage, genuine affection, real intimacy, the kind of love that saw all of her and wanted all of her. I'm married to your brother, she whispered, grasping for reasons to stop this before it went any further. You're married to a man who treats you like an accessory, Daniel said, his voice gentle but firm. That's not love, Isabella. That's not marriage. That's just coexisting. Isabella knew he was right, but the weight of her vows, her guilt, her fear of what would happen if anyone found out, pressed down on her like a physical thing. "I need to go," she said, standing abruptly. "This is all wrong. I should be trying to fix my marriage, not allowing yourself to be happy." Daniel stood too, following her to the door. "Isabella, you deserve better than what Marcus is giving you." "He's not a bad man," Isabella said automatically, the defense coming from years of habit. "I never said he was. But that doesn't mean he's the right man for you. That doesn't mean you have to spend the rest of your life being invisible." Isabella turned to face him at the door, her hand on the handle, her heart breaking with the impossibility of their situation. "I can't do this, Daniel. I can't be the woman who has an affair with her husband's brother. I can't destroy my marriage, destroy your family." "What if your marriage is already destroyed?" Daniel asked quietly. "What if it's been over for months, and you're just too afraid to admit it?" The question hit Isabella like a physical blow, because deep down, she knew he was right. Her marriage to Marcus had been dead for a long time. They'd just been going through the motions, pretending that existing in the same house was the same as being in love. "I can't," she whispered, but the words lacked conviction. Daniel stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body, could smell his cologne, could see the gold flecks in his green eyes. "Isabella, I'm not going to push you. I'm not going to ask you to choose between me and Marcus, or make demands, or pressure you into anything you're not ready for. But I need you to know that what I feel for you is real. And I think what you feel for me is real too." Isabella looked up at him, this man who had awakened something in her she thought was dead forever, and felt her resolve wavering. "I'm leaving for a few days," Daniel continued. "Going to photograph a wedding in the Hamptons. But when I get back, if you want to see me, if you want to explore what this could be, I'll be here. If you don't, if you decide to try to make things work with Marcus, I'll understand. I'll step back, and we can pretend this never happened." Isabella nodded, not trusting her voice. "But Isabella," Daniel said, reaching out to touch her face one more time, "please don't choose to be miserable just because it feels safer than choosing to be happy." Isabella left Daniel's apartment in a daze, her lips still tingling from his kiss, her heart torn between guilt and longing. She drove home through the city streets, trying to figure out how her life had become so complicated, how she'd gone from dutiful wife to adulteress in the space of a few months. Marcus was in his study when she got home, as always, surrounded by the detritus of his latest business crisis. He barely looked up when she passed his door, and Isabella realized with a start that he probably hadn't even noticed she'd been gone for 3 hours. That night, lying alone in her bed, Isabella stared at the ceiling and tried to sort through her feelings. She was married to Marcus, had promised to love him for better or worse. But what happened when worse meant slowly disappearing from your own life? What happened when the man you'd pledged to spend forever with stopped seeing you as anything more than a beautiful object to be maintained and displayed? For the first time in her marriage, Isabella allowed herself to imagine a different life. A life where she mattered to someone, where her thoughts and feelings and dreams were valued. A life where she could wake up next to someone who looked at her like she was the most fascinating person in the world. A life with Daniel. The fantasy was intoxicating and terrifying in equal measure. Could she really leave Marcus? Could she really destroy their marriage, their families, everything they'd built together, for the possibility of something real with Daniel? She was still wrestling with these questions 3 days later when Marcus came home early from the office, something so unusual that Isabella actually looked up from her book in surprise. "You're home," she said, glancing at the clock. It was barely 6 o'clock. "Meeting got cancelled," Marcus said, but there was something strange in his voice, something tense and watchful. "Isabella, we need to talk." Something in his tone made Isabella's stomach clench with anxiety. "About what?" Marcus moved to the window, staring out at the garden with his hands clasped behind his back. About Daniel. About what's been going on between you two. Isabella's blood turned to ice. I don't know what you mean. Marcus turned to face her, and for the first time in months, she had his complete attention. Unfortunately, it wasn't the kind of attention she'd been craving. Don't lie to me, Isabella. I know you've been seeing him. Coffee dates, gallery visits, long afternoons when you're mysteriously unreachable. Isabella's mind raced. How did Marcus know? Had someone seen them together? Had Daniel said something? We are friends, Isabella said carefully. He's been showing me around the art scene, helping me get back in touch with that part of myself. Friends. Marcus's voice was flat, skeptical. Is that what you call it when you spent 3 hours at his apartment last Tuesday? Isabella's heart stopped. He'd had her followed. Actually had someone watching her, documenting her movements like she was a criminal. You had me followed. The words came out strangled with shock and hurt. I had my wife's unusual behavior investigated, yes. Marcus's voice was cold, businesslike, like he was discussing a corporate acquisition. When the woman you're married to suddenly starts lying about where she's been, starts dressing differently, starts acting like a completely different person, you ask questions. Acting like a different person. Isabella stood up, anger beginning to override her shock. You mean acting like someone with opinions and interests and a life outside of your work schedule? I mean acting like someone who's having an affair with my brother. The accusation hung in the air between them, ugly and stark. Isabella felt her carefully constructed world beginning to crumble around her. I'm not having an affair, she said, but the words felt weak, insufficient. Aren't you? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're spending more time with Daniel than you are with your own husband. Maybe that's because Daniel actually wants to spend time with me. The words exploded out of Isabella before she could stop them. Maybe it's because he listens when I talk, remembers things I tell him, treats me like I'm a person instead of a beautiful accessory. Marcus flinched as if she'd slapped him. That's not fair. Isn't it? Marcus, when's the last time you asked about my day and actually waited for an answer? When's the last time you looked up from your phone during dinner? When's the last time you touched me like you actually wanted to? I've been busy. You're always busy. Isabella was shouting now, 2 years of suppressed frustration pouring out of her. There's always another merger, another acquisition, another crisis that's more important than your wife. Everything I do is for us. No, everything you do is for you. For your success, your legacy, your empire. I'm just part of the package. The beautiful wife who looks good at business dinners and keeps your house running smoothly. Marcus ran a hand through his hair, looking genuinely distressed for the first time in months. Isabella, that's not true. I love you. Do you? Isabella laughed bitterly. When's the last time you said that and meant it? When's the last time you looked at me, really looked at me, and saw the woman you married? Marcus opened his mouth to answer, then closed it, clearly struggling. I can't remember either, Isabella said softly. And that's the problem, Marcus. We are not married anymore. We are just two people living in the same house, going through the motions. So you decided to find comfort with my brother? Marcus's voice was sharp with hurt and anger. Isabella felt tears spring to her eyes. I didn't plan this. I didn't want to fall in love with Daniel. But he sees me, Marcus. He talks to me like my thoughts matter, like I'm interesting, like I'm worth his time and attention. You're in love with him. Marcus's voice was flat, like he was stating a fact rather than asking a question. Isabella looked at her husband, this man she'd pledged her life to, and realized there was no point in lying anymore. Yes, she whispered. I think I am. The admission hung between them like a death sentence. Marcus staggered backward as if she'd physically struck him, his face going pale. How could you do this to me? To us. Isabella, we are married. We took vows. So did you, Isabella said quietly. Vows to love and cherish me. To be present in our marriage, not just provide for it financially. I have been present. Have you? Because I've been dying inside for 2 years, Marcus. Slowly disappearing, losing myself piece by piece, and you never noticed. You never once asked if I was happy, if I was fulfilled, if I needed anything more than designer clothes and expensive dinners. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, and Isabella could see him struggling with the truth of her words. I thought you were happy, he said finally, his voice small. You never complained, never said you wanted anything different. I tried, Isabella said, tears streaming down her face now. I tried to tell you I was lonely, that I missed working, that I wanted us to spend time together. But you were always too busy to listen. So you turned to Daniel. Daniel turned to me, Isabella corrected. He saw that I was unhappy, that I was lost, and he cared enough to try to help me find myself again. By seducing you. Isabella shook her head. By seeing me. By treating me like I mattered. By remembering that I used to be someone interesting before I became your wife. The words hit Marcus like physical blows, and Isabella could see them landing, could see him finally understanding what he'd lost, what he'd thrown away through neglect and indifference. Isabella, Marcus said, his voice breaking. I never meant. I didn't realize. I know you didn't, Isabella said softly. And that's the problem. You didn't realize because you stopped paying attention. You stopped seeing me as anything more than part of your life's infrastructure. They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of their broken marriage settling around them like dust. What happens now? Marcus asked finally. Isabella looked at her husband, this man she'd once loved completely, and felt a deep sadness for what they'd lost, what they'd let slip away through inattention and neglect. I don't know, she said honestly. I can't keep living like this, Marcus. I can't keep being invisible in my own marriage. What if I change? What if I make more time, pay more attention? Can you? Isabella interrupted. Really? Or will you try for a few weeks until the next crisis, the next merger, the next excuse to put work before our marriage? Marcus opened his mouth to protest, then closed it, because they both knew the answer. Isabella wiped her tears with the back of her hand, feeling something like relief mixed with her sorrow. I think we need some time apart. To figure out who we are, what we want, whether there's anything left of our marriage worth saving. You want a separation? I want space to breathe. To remember who I am outside of being your wife. To figure out if the woman I've become is someone I can live with. Marcus nodded slowly, looking older than she'd ever seen him. And Daniel? Isabella looked toward the window, toward the world beyond the confines of their beautiful, empty house. I don't know. Maybe. But not because I'm running from you to him. Because I need to find out who I am when I'm allowed to be myself. I love you, Marcus said suddenly, desperately. Isabella, I do love you. I know I haven't shown it, I know I've been a terrible husband, but I do love you. Isabella looked at him and saw, for the first time in months, genuine emotion in his eyes. Pain, regret, love that might be real but had been buried under years of ambition and neglect. I know you do, she said softly. In your way. But Marcus, love isn't just a feeling. It's a choice you make every day. It's paying attention, being present, making the person you love feel valued and cherished. And you stopped making that choice a long time ago. That night, Isabella packed a bag and moved into the guest suite on the 3rd floor. It wasn't much of a separation, they were still in the same house, but it felt like a first step toward reclaiming her life. Marcus threw himself into work with even more intensity than usual, leaving the house before dawn and returning after midnight. Isabella suspected he was avoiding her as much as she was avoiding him, both of them unsure how to navigate the wreckage of their marriage. Daniel returned from the Hamptons 3 days later and called immediately. "Isabella, I've been thinking about you every minute I was gone. How are you?" The sound of his voice sent warmth flooding through her chest, a reminder of what it felt like to be wanted, to be missed. "Marcus knows," she said without preamble. "About us. About everything." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "How?" "He had me followed. Daniel, he knows we've been meeting, that I was at your apartment." "Jesus. Are you okay? Did he hurt you?" The concern in Daniel's voice made Isabella's eyes fill with tears. Even in the middle of a crisis, his first thought was for her well-being. "I'm okay. We are separated. Not officially, but I moved into the guest room. We are trying to figure out what comes next. And us. What does this mean for us?" Isabella closed her eyes, leaning against the window of her temporary bedroom. "I don't know. Everything is so complicated right now." "It doesn't have to be," Daniel said softly. "Isabella, I love you. I love you, and I want to be with you. Not because you're married to my brother, not because it's forbidden, but because you're the most incredible woman I've ever known." "Daniel, I know the timing is terrible, I know this is the worst possible moment to say this, but I can't pretend anymore. I want a life with you. I want to wake up next to you and argue about which paintings to hang in our living room and watch you get excited about some new artist you've discovered. I want to build something real with you." Isabella felt her heart soar and break at the same time. Everything Daniel was offering, a real partnership, genuine love, a life where she mattered, was everything she'd been missing in her marriage to Marcus. "But what about your family? Your relationship with Marcus? I can't be the reason you lose your brother. Marcus lost me the day he decided his company was more important than the woman he married," Daniel said firmly. "Isabella, I've watched him take you for granted for months. I've watched you disappear a little more every time I saw you. I can't stand by and watch that anymore." "So what are you saying?" "I'm saying choose yourself, Isabella. Choose happiness. Choose a life where you're seen and valued and loved the way you deserve to be loved." Isabella closed her eyes, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down on her. Stay with Marcus and try to rebuild a marriage that had been broken for years, or take a leap of faith with Daniel and build something new. "I need time," she said finally. "To figure out who I am outside of this marriage, outside of both of you. I've been someone's wife for so long, I've forgotten how to just be myself." "Take all the time you need," Daniel said. "I'll be here when you're ready. Whether that's tomorrow or next month or next year. I'll wait. What if I decide to try to make things work with Marcus?" There was a pause, and when Daniel spoke again, his voice was quiet but steady. "Then I'll step back and wish you both happiness. But Isabella, make sure you're choosing him because you love him, not because you're afraid of what people will think if you don't." Over the following weeks, Isabella began the difficult process of rediscovering herself. She reached out to old friends she'd lost touch with during her marriage, reconnected with former colleagues from the art world, even started taking a painting class at a local studio. For the first time in years, she had opinions about things that mattered to her. She laughed with friends, stayed up late reading novels, went to gallery openings and theater performances and concerts. She remembered what it felt like to be intellectually stimulated, emotionally engaged, fully alive. Marcus made efforts to change, she had to give him credit for that. He came home earlier, took fewer calls during dinner, even suggested they take a weekend trip together. But Isabella could see the effort it cost him, could see him struggling against every instinct that told him what came first. "I'm trying," he said one evening after putting his phone away during their attempt at a dinner conversation. "I know I haven't been the husband you needed, but I'm trying to change." "I can see that," Isabella said gently. And I appreciate it, Marcus. But I need you to understand, I can't go back to being the woman I was before. I can't go back to being invisible, to having no identity outside of being your wife. I don't want you to be invisible, Marcus said, but Isabella could see the confusion in his eyes. He genuinely didn't understand what she'd been missing, what she needed from him. Marcus, can you tell me 3 things I'm passionate about? Besides you and our marriage. Marcus opened his mouth, then closed it, clearly struggling. Art, he said finally. You like art? What kind of art? What period? Which artist? What is it about art that moves me? Marcus was quiet, and Isabella could see him realizing how little he actually knew about the woman he'd been married to for 3 years. I don't know, he admitted quietly. That's the problem, Isabella said softly. You fell in love with me, but you never bothered to really know me. And I let myself disappear so completely that there wasn't much left to know. They tried counseling, sitting in an expensive therapist's office while Isabella talked about feeling invisible and Marcus talked about the pressures of running a multinational corporation. The therapist suggested communication exercises, date nights, schedule time for intimacy. But Isabella could see that Marcus was going through the motions, checking boxes on a list of how to save a marriage rather than genuinely understanding what had gone wrong between them. He wanted to fix their relationship the same way he'd fix a business problem, with efficient solutions and measurable outcomes. I don't think he understands that marriage isn't a contract to be managed, Isabella told Daniel during one of their careful, platonic coffee meetings. It's a connection between 2 people who choose each other every day. Do you still love him? Daniel asked quietly. Isabella considered the question honestly. I love the man I married. I love the memory of who we used to be together. But I don't know if I love who he is now, or who I am when I'm with him. And us? How do you feel about us? Isabella looked across the table at Daniel, this man who had awakened her from a 2-year sleep, who had reminded her that she was worth loving, worth seeing, worth choosing. Terrified, she said honestly. And more alive than I've felt in years. Daniel reached across the table and covered her hand with his. Isabella, I know this is scary. I know leaving Marcus would be complicated and painful and would turn both our families upside down. But I also know that life is short, and chances for real love don't come along often. What if we're wrong? What if what we feel for each other is just the excitement of something forbidden? Then we'll figure that out together. But what if we're right? What if this is real, and we let it slip away because we're too afraid to take a chance on happiness? That night, Isabella sat in her childhood bedroom at her parents' house. She'd finally moved out of the mansion completely, needing space to think clearly about her future. She made a list of all the reasons to stay married to Marcus, all the reasons to try to make their relationship work. The list was long: their shared history, their family's expectations, the financial security, the social complications of divorce, the way people would judge her for leaving her husband for his younger brother. Then she made a list of reasons to leave Marcus and take a chance with Daniel. That list was shorter but somehow weightier: the possibility of being truly known and loved, the chance to build a partnership based on genuine connection, the opportunity to be herself completely without fear of judgment or indifference. She was still staring at the list when her phone rang. Marcus. Isabella, his voice was strained, desperate. I need to see you. Please. There's something I need to tell you. They met at a small restaurant downtown, neutral territory where they could talk without the ghost of their marriage haunting every corner. Marcus looked terrible, exhausted, stressed, older than his 35 years. I've been thinking about what you said, he began without preamble. About love being a choice you make every day. About paying attention, being present. Isabella waited, not sure where this was leading. I realized something, Marcus continued. I've been so afraid of failing as a provider, so determined to give you everything you could possibly need materially, that I forgot to give you the one thing you actually wanted. Which was me. My attention, my time, my genuine interest in who you are and what you think and what makes you happy. Marcus's voice cracked with emotion. Isabella, I've been a terrible husband. Not because I don't love you, but because I was so focused on showing love through providing that I forgot how to show love through being present. Isabella felt tears prick her eyes. This was the most emotionally honest conversation they'd had in years. Marcus. Let me finish. Please. Marcus leaned forward, his grey eyes intense with an emotion she hadn't seen in them for years. I know I'm probably too late. I know you have feelings for Daniel, and I know he can give you things I've failed to give you. But Isabella, I want to fight for us. Not because I'm afraid of losing you to my brother, but because I finally understand what I'm losing. What are you saying? I'm saying I'm ready to make you my priority. Really make you my priority. I've already started stepping back from day-to-day operations at the company, promoting key people to handle things I used to insist on doing myself. I want to learn who you are now, not just remember who you were when we got married. Isabella stared at him, seeing something in Marcus she hadn't seen since their early days together: vulnerability, genuine remorse, real love that wasn't buried under layers of ambition and distraction. But what happens when the next crisis hits? What happens when there's another merger, another acquisition that threatens everything you've built? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then I handle it during business hours, and I come home to my wife. Isabella, I can't promise I'll never work long hours or miss dinner sometimes. But I can promise that you always know you matter more to me than any deal, any contract, any amount of money. Isabella felt her carefully constructed walls beginning to crumble. This was what she'd wanted from Marcus for 2 years, not just the words, but the genuine understanding behind them. What about Daniel? She asked quietly. Marcus's jaw tightened, but his voice remained steady. Daniel is my brother, and I love him. But I'm not going to pretend I'm okay with him being in love with my wife. If you choose to stay married to me, to really try to rebuild what we had, then we need to set boundaries. And if I choose Daniel? Marcus closed his eyes briefly, and Isabella saw real pain flicker across his features. Then I'll have to learn to live with losing the most important thing in my life because I was too stupid to appreciate it when I had it. Isabella felt her heart breaking for both of them, for Marcus, who was finally understanding what he'd lost, and for herself, having to choose between the familiar love of her marriage and the exciting possibility of something new with Daniel. I need time, she said finally. To think, to figure out what I really want. How much time? Isabella looked at her husband, this man she'd once loved completely, who was finally showing her the attention and love she'd craved for years. I don't know. But Marcus, if I choose to stay, if I choose to try again with our marriage, it has to be different. I can't go back to being the invisible wife who exists in the margins of your life. You won't be, Marcus said firmly. Isabella, if you give me another chance, I swear to you that I'll spend every day proving that you made the right choice. That weekend, Isabella met Daniel at his apartment to tell him about her conversation with Marcus. He listened without interruption, his expression growing more and more pained as she spoke. So he's finally ready to be a husband, Daniel said when she finished. Only took the threat of losing you to make him realize what he had. Daniel, don't. No, you're right. I'm sorry. Daniel ran a hand through his hair, looking suddenly exhausted. I love you, Isabella. I love you, and the thought of losing you to someone who took you for granted for years. You're not losing me, Isabella said softly. Whatever I decide, you'll always be important to me. You saved me, Daniel. You reminded me who I was when I'd forgotten completely. But Isabella looked at him, this man who had awakened her heart, who had shown her what it felt like to be truly seen and valued. But I need to figure out if what Marcus is offering now is real, or if it's just fear of losing something he thinks belongs to him. Daniel nodded slowly. And how will you know? I don't know yet. But I owe it to myself, to both of you, to be sure about what I want before I make a choice that will change all our lives. Daniel stood up and walked to the window, staring out at the city below. Can I ask you something? Of course. When you imagine your future, when you think about being happy, really happy, what does that look like? Isabella closed her eyes, trying to envision the life she wanted. I see myself doing work that matters to me. Maybe curating again, or teaching, or running my own gallery. I see myself with someone who knows me completely, who values my thoughts and opinions, who chooses to spend time with me not because he has to but because he wants to. That could be Marcus, Daniel said quietly. If he's really changed, if he's really ready to be the husband you need. It could be. Daniel turned from the window to look at her. It could also be me. Isabella met his eyes, seeing all the love and longing and hope reflected there. I know. So what do we do now? Isabella stood up, moving to stand beside him at the window. Now I take some time to figure out who I am when I'm not trying to save a marriage or falling in love with someone new. I need to remember who Isabella is when she's just herself. Daniel nodded, though she could see it cost him. How long? I don't know. A few weeks. A month. However long it takes for me to be sure about what I want. And in the meantime. Isabella looked at him, this man who had shown her what real love could look like. In the meantime, we don't see each other. I can't think clearly about my marriage when I'm falling deeper in love with you every day. Daniel's face crumpled with pain, but he nodded. You're right. As much as I hate it, you're right. Isabella reached up and cupped his face with her hands, memorizing the feel of his skin, the gold flecks in his green eyes, the way he looked at her like she was the most precious thing in the world. I love you, she whispered. Whatever happens, whatever I decide, I need you to know that I love you. Daniel covered her hands with his own. I love you too. And because I love you, I want you to choose whatever will make you happiest. Even if that's not me. Isabella kissed him then, soft and sweet and full of love and goodbye. When they broke apart, both had tears in their eyes. I'll wait, Daniel said. However long it takes, I'll wait for you to decide. Isabella spent the next month in something approaching solitude. She stayed in a small apartment she rented in the village, close enough to the galleries and cultural centers that had once been her world. She didn't see Marcus except for 2 brief meetings with lawyers about a potential separation agreement. She didn't see Daniel at all, though he texted once a week just to let her know he was thinking of her. Instead, she focused on rediscovering herself. She visited museums, read voraciously, started painting again for the first time since college. She had coffee with old friends, long conversations with her sister, quiet dinners alone where she practiced the lost art of being comfortable in her own company. Slowly, gradually, she began to remember who she was outside of being someone's wife, someone's object of desire, someone's problem to be solved. She was a woman who loved art and beauty, who had strong opinions about everything from politics to poster sauce, who laughed easily and felt deeply and dreamed of making a difference in the world. She was also a woman who had been married to a man who loved her but didn't know how to show it, and who had fallen in love with a man who saw her completely but came with complications that could destroy 2 families. At the end of the month, Isabella knew what she had to do. She called Marcus first. I've made my decision, she said without preamble when he answered his phone. And? Isabella took a deep breath. I want to try again. With our marriage. But Marcus, I need you to understand that this isn't me choosing you over Daniel. This is me choosing to see if the man you've become in the last month is someone I can build a real marriage with. The silence on the other end of the line stretched so long that Isabella wondered if the call had dropped. Marcus. I'm here. His voice was thick with emotion. Isabella, I swear to you, I will spend every day proving that you made the right choice. I hope so. Because if we do this, if we really try to rebuild our marriage, there can't be any more half measures. I need a husband who's present, who's engaged, who chooses me every single day. You'll have that. I promise. And Marcus. I'm going back to work. I'm going to start curating again, maybe eventually open my own gallery. I need work that fulfills me, that reminds me who I am outside of being your wife. Whatever you want. Whatever makes you happy. Isabella hoped he meant it. The call to Daniel was infinitely harder. I've made my decision, she said, echoing her words to Marcus. I can hear it in your voice, Daniel said quietly. You're choosing him. I'm choosing to try again with my marriage. Daniel, I love you. I need you to know that. But I can't build a new relationship on the ruins of my old one. I need to know that I gave my marriage everything I had before I walk away from it. Daniel was quiet for a long moment. I understand. I hate it, but I understand. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for putting you through this, for making you fall in love with someone who couldn't choose you. Don't apologize for that, Daniel said firmly. Isabella, loving you has been the best thing that's happened to me in years. Even if it ends with losing you, I'm grateful for every moment we had. Isabella was crying now, tears streaming down her face as she said goodbye to the man who had saved her from disappearing entirely. Will you be okay? She asked. Eventually. And Isabella. I hope you get everything you want with Marcus. I hope he becomes the husband you deserve. What will you do? I think I'll travel for a while. There's a photography project in South America I've been considering. Maybe it's time to put some distance between myself and everything here. Isabella closed her eyes, knowing that Daniel was leaving because of her, because staying would be too painful. I'm sorry, she whispered again. Don't be. Just be happy, Isabella. Please. Be so happy that all of this was worth it.